Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to our thrilling read-aloud of The Hound of the Baskervilles by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Mildly interrupted, but that won't matter when we make a playlist of these videos. I had to stop reading for a couple of days, but I'm back now, and we are still dealing with Dr. John Watson, who is on the moor. He is in Dartmoor. He is on the border of the great Grimpen Mire at Baskerville Hall, where he has been sent at the behest of his friend Sherlock Holmes in order to accompany and protect Sir Henry Baskerville, who, despite being the heir to an old and troubled title in England, was raised in America and Canada and doesn't know the land at all, but has quickly come to realize that there seems to be some truth to mythology of a monstrous spectral hound haunting the heirs of the Baskerville title. All sorts of wacky things are going on the moor, and also there are human problems as well. Sir Henry has fallen in love with the sister of a naturalist in the neighborhood called Stapleton. She's almost literally the only woman within 50 miles, so it's just lucky for him that she's not only pretty, but seems to return his affections. Also, the butler at Baskerville Hall, Barrymore, he and his wife seem to be deeply involved with the criminal on the moor. There is a murderous criminal, apart from a spectral hound, there's a murderous criminal at loose on the moor. And he turns out to be the brother of the butler's wife, the brother of the housekeeper at Baskerville Hall. And there was a mysterious figure that Watson glimpsed just briefly on the tour. Could it be another ghost connected with the legend of Baskerville Hall? All of that came to a head last time. If you are looking at a playlist, then that will be the last thing you saw. So we are now up to chapter 10, which is not... The last few chapters have been letters that Watson was sending to Sherlock Holmes, who could not accompany him to the moors, but asked him to keep Holmes informed. This is not a letter. This is an extract from a diary. So that's where we're... Oh no! Oh no! Oh! Oh no! We broke the Hound of the Baskervilles! Oh no! Oh! Oh! I'm gonna miss this. This Magnum Easy Eye paperback is now dead. Oh, all right. Well, we'll do chapter 10. Chapter 10 is the last one before the break. The break happens evenly on chapter 11. So we'll do chapter 10 in this format. So far, I have been able to quote from the reports which I have forwarded during these early days to Sherlock Holmes. Now, however, I have arrived at a point in my narrative where I am compelled to abandon this method and to trust once more to my recollections, aided by the diary which I kept at the time. A few extracts from the latter will carry me on to those scenes which are indelibly fixed in every detail upon my memory. I proceed then from the morning which followed our abortive chase of the convict and our strange experiences upon the moor, and that morning is October 16th. A dull and foggy day with a drizzle of rain. The house is banked with rolling clouds, which rise now and then to show the dreary curves of the moor, with thin silver veins upon the sides of the hills, and the distant boulders gleaming where the light strikes upon their wet faces. It is melancholy outside and in. The baronet is in a black reaction after the excitements of the night, and I am conscious myself of a weight at my heart and a feeling of impending danger, ever-present danger, which is the more terrible because I am unable to define it. And have not I cause for such a feeling? Consider the long sequence of incidents which have all pointed to some sinister influence which is at work around us. There is the death of the last occupant of the hall, fulfilling so exactly the conditions of the family legend. He didn't have his throat torn out. And there is the repeated reports from peasants of the appearance of a strange creature upon the moor. Twice I have with my own ears heard the sound which resembled the distant baying of a hound. It is incredible, impossible, that it should really be outside the ordinary laws of nature. A spectral hound which leaves material footprints and fills the air with its howling is surely not to be thought of. Stapleton, that's the naturalist, may fall in with such a superstition, and Mortimer also, that's Dr. Mortimer, who brought the case to Sherlock Holmes' attention. But I have one quality upon earth. If I have one quality upon earth, it is common sense, and nothing will persuade me to believe in such a thing. To do so would be to descend to the level of these poor peasants, who are not content with a mere fiend dog, but must needs describe him with hellfire shooting from his mouth and eyes. Holmes would not listen to such fancies, and I am his agent. But facts are facts, and I've twice heard this crying upon the moor. Suppose that there were really some huge hound loose upon it. That would go far to explain everything. But where could such a hound lie concealed? Where did it get its food? Where did it come from? And how was it that no one saw it by day? It must be confessed that the natural explanation offers almost as many difficulties as the other. And always, apart from the hound, there is the fact of the human agency in London, the man in the cab, and the letter which warned Sir Henry against the moor. This, at least, was real, but it might have been the work of a protecting friend as easily as that of an enemy. Where is that friend or enemy now? Has he remained in London, or has he followed us down here? Could he be the stranger whom I saw upon the tor? It is true that I have had only one glance of him, and yet there are some things to which I am ready to swear. He is no one whom I have seen down here, and I have now met all the neighbors. The figure was far taller than that of Stapleton, far thinner than that of Franklin. Barrymore it might possibly have been, but when we had left him behind us, and I am certain that he could not have followed us. A stranger, then, is still dogging us, just as a stranger dogged us in London. We have never shaken him off. If I could lay my hands upon that man, then at last we might find ourselves at the end of our difficulties. To this one purpose I must now devote all my energies. A couple of first-time readers of this novel that I have known have correctly identified that figure on the moor. My first impulse was to tell Sir Henry all my plans. My second and wisest one was to play my own game and speak of it as little as possible to anyone. He is silent and distrait. His nerves have been strangely shaken by that sound upon the moor. I will say nothing to add to his experiences, but I will take my own steps to attain my own end. We had a small scene this morning after breakfast. Barrymore asked leave to speak with Sir Henry, and they were closeted in his study some little time. Again, I point out, you haven't ruled Barrymore out as the stalker of the whole Baskerville family, and your job here is to protect Sir Henry. He should be having it in these quiet meetings without you. This is twice now. First with Stapleton and now with Barrymore. You're letting all the suspects get him alone in a room. Sitting in the billiard room, I more than once heard the sound of voices raised, and I had a pretty good idea what the point was which was under discussion. After a time, the baronet opened his door and called for me. "Barrymore considers that he has a grievance," said he. "He thinks that it was unfair on our part to hunt his brother-in-law down when he, of his own free will, had told us the secret." The butler was standing very pale, but very collected, before us. "I may have spoken too warmly, sir," said he, "and if I have, I am sure that I beg your pardon. At the same time, I am very much surprised when I heard you two gentlemen come back this morning and learned that you have been chasing Selden. That's the convict. The poor fellow has enough to fight against without my putting more upon his track." Point being that once they learned from Barrymore that Selden was loose on the moor and that Barrymore was in communication with him, sending signals to him so that Barrymore could take him food, the baronet and Watson did what was right. This guy's a murderer who has escaped and is terrorizing the neighborhood. Surely they should go out in place of Barrymore and capture him. But Barrymore feels distraught because they wouldn't have known about it otherwise. "If you had told us of your own free will, it would have been a different thing," said the baronet. "You only told us, or rather your wife only told us, when it was forced from you and you could not help yourself." "I didn't think you would have taken advantage of it, Sir Henry. Indeed, I didn't." "The man is a public danger. There are only lonely houses scattered over the moor, and he is a fellow who would stick at nothing. You only want us to get a glimpse of his face to see that. Look at Mr. Stapleton's house, for instance, with no one but himself to defend it. There's no safety for anyone till he's under lock and key." "He'll break into no house, sir. I give you my solemn word upon that. But he will never trouble anyone in this country again. I assure you, Sir Henry, that in a very few days the necessary arrangements will have been made, and he will be on his way to South America. For God's sake, sir, I beg you not to let the police know that he is still on the moor. They have given up the chase there, and he can lie quiet until the ship is ready for him. You can't tell on him without getting my wife and me into trouble. I beg you, sir, to say nothing to the police." "What do you say, Watson?" "Well, Watson doesn't need to speak up. The guy's a convicted murderer. You don't let him take ship to another country." But anyway, let's see what Watson has to say. I shrugged my shoulders. If he were safely out of the country, it would relieve the taxpayer of a burden. "But how about the chances he was holding someone up before he goes?" "He would not do anything so mad, sir. We have provided him with all that he can want. To commit a crime would be to show where he was hiding." "That is true," said Sir Henry. "Well, Barrymore." "God bless you, sir, and thank you from my heart. It would have killed my poor wife had he been taken again." "I guess we are aiding and abetting a felony, Watson. But after what we've heard, I don't feel as if I could give the man up. So there's an end of it. All right, Barrymore, you can go. With a few broken words of gratitude, the man turned, but he hesitated and then came back. You've been so kind to us, sir, that I should like to do the best I can for you in return. I know something, Sir Henry, and perhaps I should have said it before, but it was long after the inquest that I found it out. I've never breathed a word about it yet to a mortal man. It's about poor Sir Charles's death. That was Sir Henry's forebearer who died with the print of a gigantic hound beside his dead body. The baronet and I were both upon our feet. Do you know how he died? No, sir, I don't know that. What then? I know why he was at the gate at that hour. It was to meet a woman. To meet a woman? He? Yes, sir. And what's the woman's name? I can't give you the name, sir, but I can give you the initials. Her initials were L.L. Lana Lang? Lois Lane? Laurie Lamars? Could be anybody. How do you know all this, Barrymore? Well, Sir Henry, your uncle had a letter that morning. He had usually a great many letters, for he was a public man and well known of his kind heart, so that everyone who was in trouble was glad to turn to him. But that morning, as it chanced, there was only this one letter, so I took the more notice of it. It was from Coombe Tracy, and it was addressed in a woman's hand. Well? Well, sir, I thought no more of the matter, and I never would have done had it not been for my wife. Only a few weeks ago, she was cleaning out Sir Charles's study. It had never been touched since his death, and she found the ashes of a burned letter in the back of the grate. The greater part of it was charred to pieces, but one little slip, the end of a page, hung together, and the writing could be read, though it was gray on a black ground. It seemed to us to be postscript to the end of a letter, and it said, quote, Please, please, as you are a gentleman, burn this letter, and be at the gate by 10 o'clock. Beneath it were signed the initials, L.L. Laurie Lamars is a mermaid. She probably had to find it difficult to get around on the moor. Although, can I make a point to everyone in the Victorian era? I shouldn't say everyone in the Victorian era. I should say everyone in Victorian novels. Can I make a point? When you want a piece of paper burned in the fire, hold it to the fire and watch it burn. Don't throw it into the grate. It will always end up in the back of the grate and part of it will be legible. So just burn it. Just hold it to the fire and burn it until it's all ashes. Don't trust to chance, because Sherlock Holmes is going to find what you leave. Have you got that slip? No, sir. It crumbled all to bits after we moved it. Had Sir Charles received any other letters in the same writing? Well, sir, I took no notice of his letters. I should not have noticed this one only. It happened to come alone. And you have no idea who L.L. is? No, sir. No more than you have. But I expect if we could lay hands upon that lady, we would know more about Sir Charles's death. I don't see that, but all right. I cannot understand, Barrymore, how you came to conceal this important information. Well, sir, it was immediately after our own trouble came to us, and then again, sir, we were both very fond of Sir Charles, as well as we might have been, considering all that he's done for us. To rake this up couldn't help our poor master. It's well to go carefully when there's a lady in the case, even the best of us. You thought it might injure his reputation? Well, sir, I thought no good could come of it. But now you have been kind to us, and I felt as it would be treating you unfairly not to tell you all that I know about the matter. Very good, Barrymore. You can go. When the butler had left us, Sir Henry turned to me. Well, Watson, what do you think of this new lad? It seems to me to leave the darkness rather blacker than before. Yeah, there's a new element involved. There's another person. Oh, blacker. Let's get rid of the light if we're dealing with blackness here. So I think, but if we can only trace L.L., it should clear up the whole business. We have gained that much. We know that there is someone who has the facts if we can only find her. What do you think we should do? Let Holmes know all about it at once. It will give him a clue for which he has been seeking. I am much mistaken if it does not bring him down. Watson is always hoping that Holmes is going to appear in person. I went at once to my room and drew up my report of the morning's conversation for Holmes. It was evident to me that he had been very busy of late, for the notes which I had from Baker Street were few and short, with no comments upon the information which I had supplied, and hardly any reference to my mission. No doubt his blackmailing case is absorbing all his faculties, and yet this new factor must surely arrest his attention and renew his interest. I wish he were here. Then we moved to October 17th. All day today the rain poured down, rustling on the ivy and dripping from the eaves. I thought of the convict out upon the bleak, cold, shelterless moor. But we know it's not shelterless. You've told us about shelter many times. There are shelters all over the moor. Poor devil. Whatever his crimes, he had suffered something to atone for them. Whatever his crimes, you know what his crimes are. And then I thought, and having a wet night with no provender is not you compensating for murdering someone. And then I thought of that other one, the face in the cab, the figure against the moon. Was he also out in that deluge? The unseen watcher, the man of darkness? In the evening I put on my waterproof, and I walked far upon the sodden moor, full of dark imaginings, rain beating upon my face, and the wind whistling about my ears. And also, parenthetically, I might point out, Sir Henry back alone at Baskervilles Hall. What has become of you, John Watson? You're supposed to be by his side night and day. God help those who wander into the great mire now, for even the firm uplands are becoming a morass. I found the black tor upon which I had seen the solitary watcher, and from its craggy summit I looked out myself across the melancholy downs. Rain squalls drifted across their russet face, and the heavy slate-colored clouds hung low over the landscape, trailing in grey wreaths down the side of the fantastic hills. In the distant hollow on the left, half hidden by the mist, the two thin towers of Baskerville Hall rose above the trees. They were the only signs of human life which I could see, save only those prehistoric huts which lay thickly upon the slopes of the hill. Nowhere was there any trace of that lonely man whom I had seen on the same spot 2 nights before. As I walked back, I was overtaken by Dr. Mortimer driving in his dog-cart over a rough moorland track, which led from the outlying farmhouse of Foulmire. He had been very attentive to us, and hardly a day had passed that he has not called at the hall to see how we are getting on. He insisted upon my climbing into his dog-cart, and he gave me a lift homewards. A, here's hoping that Sir Henry is still alive when you get back from where you've left him alone for the 50th time. But also B, it certainly puts the lie to this business that Stapleton said about how the moor is dangerous. People are going across it like it was Grand Central Station. I found him much troubled over the disappearance of his little spaniel. It had wandered onto the moor and had never come back. Well, the moor was right there, and the moor is really dangerous, and your little spaniel wasn't on a leash or under your control. If a little baby wandered out onto the moor like that, you'd be up on charges. And Watson wouldn't be feeling sorry for you. He'd wish the worst for you. I gave him such consolation as I might, but I thought of the pony on the Grimpen Mire, and I do not fancy that he will see his little dog again. By the way, Mortimer, said I, as we jolted along the rough road, I suppose there are a few people living within driving distance of whom you do not know? Hardly any, I think. Can you then tell me the name of any woman whose initials are LL? He thought for a few minutes. No. There are a few gypsies and laboring folk for whom I can't answer, but among the farmers or gentry there is no one whose initials are those. Wait a bit, though, he added after a pause. There is Laura Lyons. Her initials are LL, but she lives in Combe Tracy. Who is she? I asked. Well, she is Franklin's daughter. What? Old Franklin the crank? Exactly. She married an artist named Lyons who came sketching on the moor. He proved to be a blackguard and deserted her. The fault, from what I hear, may not have been entirely on one side. Okay, then he wasn't a blackguard. Her father refused to have anything to do with her because she had married without his consent, and perhaps for 1 or 2 other reasons as well. So, between the old sinner and the young one, the girl has had a pretty bad time. You have just told us that it wasn't all against her, that she was partly to blame. What is wrong with these people in this chapter? They're not sticking to their own stories. All the while, Sir Henry's dead, back at the hall, because it turns out that Barrymore was the killer. How do you know that he isn't? How do you know that he and his wife didn't let the killer into the house while you're off gallivanting? How does she live? Asked Watson. I fancy old Franklin allows her a pittance, but it cannot be more, for his own affairs are considerably involved. Whatever she may have deserved, one could not allow her to go hopelessly to the bad. Her story got about, and several of the people here did something to enable her to earn an honest living. Stapleton did for one, and Sir Charles for another. I gave a trifle myself. It was to set her up in a typewriting business. His typewriters was still fairly new. Women made huge inroads into that industry. Here was a huge amount of work you could do that you did not need to be a man to do. There was no stigma against it at all. Think of, among many, many other examples, The Odd Women by George Gissing. Here was a job that you could do. If you were a woman, you could learn the typewriting machine and get really proficient at it and get paid by the page. He wanted to know the object of my inquiries, but I managed to satisfy his curiosity without telling him too much, for there is no reason why we should take anyone into our confidence. Tomorrow morning I shall find my way to Coombe Tracey, and if I can see this Miss Laura Lyons of equivocal reputation, as a long step will have been made towards clearing one incident in this chain of mysteries. Gonna go alone there, I suppose? I am certainly developing the wisdom of a serpent, for when Mortimer pressed his questions to any inconvenient extent, I asked him casually to what type Franklin's skull belonged, so that he heard nothing but craniology for the rest of our drive, because Dr. Mortimer is a passionate phrenologist. I have not lived for years with Sherlock Holmes for nothing. Okay, all right, it's true. It's true. Watson's not an idiot. But it's possible that Holmes would have heard all this stuff and known a lot more, seen a lot deeper into it. I have only one other incident to record upon this tempestuous and melancholy day. This was my conversation with Barrymore just now, which gives me one more strong card which I can play in due time. Mortimer had stayed to dinner, and he and the baronet played cards afterwards. The butler brought me my coffee into the library, and I took the chance to ask him a few questions. Dr. Mortimer is also a suspect. You're leaving this baronet alone with every Tom, Dick, and Mortimer who comes into the house. What is the matter with you? Well, said I, has this precious relation of yours departed, or is he still lurking out yonder? I don't know, sir. I hope to heaven that he has gone, for he has brought nothing but trouble here. I've not heard of him since I left out food for him last night, and that was 3 days ago. Or left out food for him last, and that was 3 days ago. Did you see him then? No, sir, but the food was gone when next I went that way. Then he certainly was there? So you would think, sir, unless it was the other man who took it. I sat with my coffee cup halfway to my lips and stared at Barrymore. You know that there is another man, then? Yes, sir, there is another man upon the moor. Have you seen him? No, sir. How do you know of him, then? Selden told me of him, sir, a week ago or more. He is in hiding, too, but he's not a convict as far as I can make out. I don't like it, Dr. Watson. I tell you straight, sir, that I don't like it. He spoke with a sudden passion of earnestness. All right, so Watson's brief glimpse is confirmed. There is someone else on the moor. Now, listen to me, Barrymore. I have no interest in this matter but that of your master. I have come here with no object except to help him. Tell me frankly, what is it that you don't like? Barrymore hesitated for a moment, as if he regretted his outburst, and found it difficult to express his own feelings in words. It's all these goings-on, sir, he cried at last, waving his hands toward the rain-lashed window which faced the moor. There's foul play somewhere, and there's black villainy brewing. To that I'll swear. Very glad I should be, sir, to see Sir Henry on his way back to London again. Sir Henry doesn't stick from a fight. The Baskerville blood runs true in him. But what is it that alarms you? Look at Sir Charles's death. That was bad enough for all, the coroner said. Look at the noises on the moor at night. There's not a man would cross it after sundown if he was paid for it. But Watson and Mortimer just did. Look at this stranger hiding out yonder and watching their waiting. What's he waiting for? What does it mean? It means no good to anyone of the name Baskerville, and very glad I shall be to quit of it all on the day that Sir Henry's new servants are ready to take over the hall. But what about this stranger? Said I. Can you tell me anything about him? What did Selden say? Did he find out where he hid, or what he was doing? He saw him once or twice, but he is a deep one and gives nothing away. At first he thought that he was the police, but soon found that he had some lay of his own. A kind of gentleman he was, as far as he could see, but what was he doing he could not make out. Okay, so did Selden talk to him or not? And where did he say he lived? Among the old houses on the hillside, the stone huts where the old folk used to live. But how about his food? Selden found out that he has got a lad who works for him and brings him all he needs. I dare say he goes to Coombe Tracey for what he wants. Very good, Barrymore. We may talk further of this some other time. When the butler had gone, I walked over to the black window and I looked through the blurred pane at the driving clouds and at the tossing outline of the wind-swept trees. It is a wild night indoors, but what must it be in a stone hot upon the moor? What passion of hatred can it be which leads a man to lurk in such a place at such a time? And what deep and earnest purpose can he have which calls for such a trial? There, in that hut upon the moor, seems to lie the very center of that problem which has vexed me so sorely. I swear that another day shall not have passed before I have done all that man can do to reach the heart of the mystery. And there we come to the end of chapter 10, and there's no reason for me to put a bookmark in this book because it's dead. It's destroyed. This Magnum Easy Eye has fallen apart. So we did not get all the way through The Hound of the Baskervilles in that old Magnum Easy Eye edition, which is, I have to say, has always been my complaint about Magnum Easy Eye editions. I love them. For sentimental reasons, I absolutely love them, but they are crappy paperbacks. So we're going to have to move on to some other version of The Hound of the Baskervilles to go with the next chapter, which will commence next time. So I'll wrap this up for now, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.